Now, one of those women, Sandra Diaz, tells us she now has a green card but no longer works there. The other, Victorina Morales, does not and was scheduled to work yesterday but has since quit. The White House refusing to comment on this one, guys, the situation, but the Trump organization telling us we have tens of thousands of employees
who goes and cleans up after Donald Trump, makes his bed, cleans his bathroom, cleans the other bathrooms. She's illegal.
Wow.
Yes,
What?
yes, she is illegal. Victorina Morales said in an interview Friday, she can't go back to Guatemala.
Most people see big gates, fancy rooms, and perfect green grass when they look at Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster. Everything looks clean, shiny, and rich, just like the pictures on TV. But behind all that, there was another world. A quiet one, a hidden one. A world run by workers who were told to be quiet, to not be seen, and to never ask questions. One of those workers was a woman named Victorina Morales.
Victorina Morales, what was it like to be sitting there last night at the State of the Union address, seeing your former boss, President Trump?
She started working at the golf club in 2013. She didn't have the legal papers to be in the U.S., but she was still hired to work in one of the most private places in the whole club, Donald Trump's home. She made his bed, cleaned his bathroom, folded his clothes, and even laid out his suits. But she was told never to speak when he was around. Just do the job. Be quiet. Stay invisible. At first, Victorina thought she was lucky to have the job. But slowly, things started to feel wrong. She said her supervisors gave her fake papers so she could keep working. They promised her better pay, but the raise never came. She worked hard every day, but fear followed her like a shadow. Fear of being caught, fear of being fired, fear of being sent away. Still, she stayed silent for years. But now, at the age of 52, Victorina Morales is finally speaking out. She says it's time the world hears what happened behind those golden doors. Her story isn't just about cleaning rooms, it's about secrets, about how people were treated, about a side of power and money that most people never see. What did she witness while working so close to one of the most powerful men in America? And why is she choosing to speak now after so long? Victorina's voice, once silenced, is finally being heard. And her truth might shake more than just Trump's image. It could shake people's trust in what they thought they knew. Getting the job. A dream with hidden rules. Victorina Morales came to the United States from Guatemala with hope in her heart and dreams in her eyes. Like many people from small towns and poor villages, she wanted something better for herself and for her family. Life in Guatemala had been hard. Work was limited, and money was never enough. She imagined America as a land of golden chances, where hard work could turn into success, where one job could change a future. So, when she finally crossed into the U.S., it wasn't easy, but she carried strength in her heart. She didn't have the proper papers, and every day felt risky. But she kept going, because the dream was stronger than the fear. In 2013, something big happened. Victorina got a job at the Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey. It was no ordinary job. This wasn't just any hotel or house. This was one of the private homes of Donald Trump, one of the richest, most powerful, and most famous men in America. For a woman like Victorina, this job felt like a golden ticket. She was hired to work as a housekeeper, cleaning the private spaces used by Trump and his family.
Victorina Morales, an undocumented immigrant from Guatemala, has worked at the Trump National Golf Club in New Jersey for 5 years, even cleaning the president's residence.
At first, she couldn't believe it. Everything was clean, shiny, and full of gold-colored walls and expensive furniture. The bathrooms had marble counters. The beds had silk covers. The closets were filled with designer suits and polished shoes. This world was nothing like her village back home. But soon, she learned the truth behind the glamour. Victorina didn't have legal immigration status. In simple words, she was undocumented. She thought this might stop her from being hired, but it didn't. The people who managed the club didn't ask many questions. She says they helped her get fake documents, a false social security card, and a green card just so she could keep working without problems. No background checks, no deep interviews, just quiet approval. They needed someone who would work hard, stay silent, and not make trouble. Victorina was told from the beginning, keep your head down, do your job. Don't speak when Mr. Trump is nearby. Don't try to be seen. He doesn't like to see us, she later said in an interview. We had to disappear, and so she did. She followed the rules. She woke up early every morning and arrived on time. She cleaned Trump's private bedroom, arranged his clothes, polished his shoes until they shone, and even placed his shaving tools just the way he liked them. Every detail had to be perfect. A wrong fold in a shirt, a shoe not lined up properly, or a speck of dust could cause trouble. The pressure was heavy. But it wasn't just about the cleaning. It was about silence. She couldn't talk to him. She wasn't even supposed to make noise in the halls. If Trump entered a room, she had to quickly step aside or leave. Her presence was not to be noticed. She was expected to act like a shadow there, but be invisible. At first, Victorina told herself that this was normal. After all, this was a rich man's house. Maybe all workers were treated like this in big places. She tried to feel thankful. She was earning more money than she ever had before. She could finally send money home to help her children. Her husband, back in Guatemala, didn't earn much, so every dollar she sent made a big difference. But over time, the job started to feel heavier. She noticed that no matter how hard she worked, no one ever praised her. No one ever thanked her. Her supervisors spoke down to her. The managers ignored her. She started to feel like just another tool in the house, not a person, just a pair of hands. The fancy rooms and gold-painted walls no longer impressed her. They only reminded her of how small she was made to feel. And still, she stayed. For years, she followed every rule. She said nothing. She kept working. Every day, she pushed away the thoughts that something felt wrong. She told herself she was just being sensitive, that it wasn't her place to complain. But deep down, a small voice in her heart whispered the truth. Something wasn't right. And that voice? It was getting louder. Life inside Trump's world. What the public never saw. From the outside, Trump's world looked like a dream. There were tall white columns, sparkling chandeliers, and marble floors that shone like mirrors. The walls were gold-colored, the windows were spotless, and every room smelled fresh. Rich people walked in and out, smiling, laughing, dressed in the finest clothes. On special weekends, the parking lot was filled with black cars, and the golf course looked like a painting. TV cameras showed only the beauty. Pictures in magazines showed grand parties and bright lights. To most people, Trump's world seemed perfect. But Victorina Morales knew better. She didn't see what the cameras saw, she saw what happened behind the scenes. Victorina was one of the invisible hands that made all that beauty happen, but it came at a cost. She remembered how workers moved like they were walking on eggshells. Everyone was in a hurry, always afraid of making a mistake. No one wanted to get noticed. Because at that job, being seen could mean being sent home for good. Victorina saw co-workers get yelled at in front of others. She saw people cry quietly in the bathrooms. One wrong move, like forgetting to refill a bottle of water or leaving a pillow slightly off-center, and you could lose your job. There was no warning, no second chance. Every morning, Victorina woke up with worry in her chest. Her biggest fear was that someone would discover her fake documents.
Two women who labored for years at Donald Trump's golf club in Bedminster claim they cleaned his toilets and ironed his underwear for $13 an hour, but worked without legal immigration documents.
What would happen then? Would she be fired, arrested, sent back to Guatemala? Still, she went to work. She ironed shirts while Trump spoke loudly on the phone. She cleaned mirrors while important meetings happened behind closed doors. She folded towels and heard whispers about deals, business plans, and political strategy, things the public would never know about. Sometimes Trump would walk right past her without saying a word, as if she didn't exist. Other times, he would leave used tissues or wrappers on the floor, expecting someone else to pick them up. That someone was usually Victorina. No matter how important the day was or how fancy the guests were, the rules stayed the same. The workers had to vanish into the background. They weren't allowed to greet anyone. No smiles, no eye contact, just clean, polish, and stay quiet. Victorina once worked during a big event where celebrities, politicians, and high-ranking business people gathered. The music was loud, the lights were bright, and the guests were full of laughter. But behind the kitchen doors and in the hallways, the staff moved in silence. They were told again and again, do not speak unless spoken to. Do not look around. Do not be noticed. That kind of pressure was heavy. Victorina said it felt like wearing a mask every day, one that showed a calm face on the outside, but hid the stress and fear inside. She never knew if she would make it through the day without being yelled at. She never knew if she'd come home and find a letter telling her not to return. The public, meanwhile, kept believing in the image. On the news, Trump smiled proudly. His clubs were shown as symbols of wealth and greatness. But Victorina and the other workers lived in a very different world, one filled with whispers, warnings, and worry. Victorina never felt like she was part of something grand. She felt like a small piece in a big machine, one that kept running because people like her stayed quiet. The gold walls didn't feel magical to her. They felt cold. Cold like the looks she got if a sheet was slightly wrinkled. Cold like the silence that followed her footsteps down the halls. Still, she didn't complain. She needed the job. Her family back home needed the money, and she didn't want to cause trouble, not when her whole life in the US could disappear overnight. But deep inside, every passing day added weight to her heart. The truth was, this beautiful world wasn't beautiful at all for those who kept it running, and through it all, the silence remained. A silence filled with secrets, with fear, and with stories no one was brave enough to tell. Until now. Promises broken, the raises that never came. At first, Victorina Morales believed in the words of her managers. "You're doing a great job," they said with smiles. "Just wait a little longer. A raise is coming." And she believed them. She had no reason not to. She was working in one of the richest places in the country. She worked hard every day cleaning expensive bathrooms, organizing closets filled with designer suits, and preparing rooms for guests who lived lives she could only dream of. She didn't just do her job. She went above and beyond. If something needed to be done, Victorina did it. If someone needed help, she stepped in. She thought her hard work would pay off. So when they told her that her salary would increase soon, she waited. 1 week turned into 2. A month passed, then another, then a year. Still no raise, but she kept working. She thought, maybe next month. Maybe they just need more time. Her managers would pat her on the shoulder and say, "We see you. We appreciate you. We'll take care of you." But nothing changed. Victorina began to take on extra hours. She came in earlier and stayed later. She missed family calls and slept less. She even helped train new workers, showing them how to fold towels the Trump way, how to arrange furniture just right, and how to act invisible when Mr. Trump walked by. All the while, she kept hoping that her loyalty would be noticed. But instead of getting more, she often felt like she was being given less. More duties, more stress, but the same paycheck, again and again.
Now, one of those women, Sandra Diaz, tells us she now has a green card but no longer works there. The other, Victorina Morales.
Some months, it felt like she was falling behind, not moving ahead. She said, "They needed us to keep everything running, but they never treated us with respect." That sentence stayed with her. Victorina wasn't the only one who felt this way. Other workers shared similar stories. One of her friends, who cleaned the dining areas, had been promised a raise too. It never came. Another woman, who worked in the laundry room, said she got a warning for speaking up about unfair pay. Some co-workers were too scared to say anything. Others simply left, quietly, without a fuss, without any goodbye party or thank you card. They just disappeared, like they had never been there. This made Victorina angry. But more than anger, she felt sadness.
She had to stand up for other workers without legal documents.
She had given years of her life to this place. She had followed every rule, stayed silent, worked through illness, and smiled even when her back ached. She did all this because she believed it would lead to a better life, that if she just stayed patient, something good would come. But it didn't. Instead, she was stuck in a cycle where the promises were sweet, but the results were bitter. Her loyalty was used, not rewarded, and the hardest part? She couldn't even speak up. She was undocumented. She feared that if she complained too much, she'd be fired or worse, reported to immigration.
Immigration attorney representing a number of undocumented workers.
So she kept her thoughts to herself. Every time she felt the urge to ask about the raise, she swallowed her words. Every time she heard someone else get the same empty promise, she just looked away. Victorina felt like she was being punished for trusting. At night, when she finally got home and lay in bed, the thoughts came rushing in. Why do they keep lying? Why do they pretend to care? Why did I stay so long? And yet, she went back the next day. Because despite the broken promises, she still needed that paycheck. Her family in Guatemala still depended on her.
She is illegal. Victorina Morales said in an interview Friday, she can't go back to Guatemala because her family...
Rent still had to be paid. Life had to go on. But something inside her began to shift. The smile she once wore to work became harder to fake. The hope she once felt began to fade. And deep in her heart, she started to feel a fire made of truth, waiting to be told. She stayed quiet, but not forever. The fear behind every smile, living without papers. Living in America without legal papers is like walking on a tightrope every single day. It doesn't matter how careful you are, one wrong step, one unlucky moment, and everything you've built could be gone in an instant. Victorina Morales knew this better than anyone. From the day she came to the U.S., fear followed her like a shadow. It was always there when she woke up, when she went to work, even when she lay her head down at night. It wasn't just fear of losing her job. It was the deep fear of being caught, questioned, and sent back to Guatemala, a place where life had been full of struggle and where her children still waited, depending on every dollar she could send back home. Victorina didn't have the freedom most people take for granted. She couldn't go to a hospital if she got sick unless it was an emergency. Even then, she'd be afraid that someone might ask too many questions. She avoided driving far from home because she feared being stopped by police. If she saw flashing lights in her rearview mirror, her heart would pound so loudly she could barely breathe. Simple things became big risks. Going to the pharmacy, filling out a form, asking for help. She avoided any place where her name and ID might be checked. That meant no visits to public buildings, no trips to official offices, and no speaking up in public spaces. She even kept her phone off in certain areas, just in case something tracked her. And yet, through all of this, she kept working, even when she had a fever, even when her feet ached from standing all day, even when her hands were raw from cleaning chemicals. Because if she didn't work, she wouldn't get paid. And if she didn't get paid, her family wouldn't eat. That's how simple and how cruel it was. She smiled when she had to. She nodded politely. She followed every instruction, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. But behind that smile was a woman who carried fear like a heavy bag on her back. Victorina wasn't alone in this. Many workers like her shared the same fears, but no one talked about it openly. In Trump's club, they all kept quiet. It was like an unspoken rule. Don't speak about your status, don't ask for too much, and never, ever challenge the system. Her supervisors knew. She could feel it. They didn't say it out loud, but they acted like they had power over her. They reminded workers to be grateful for their jobs. They didn't need to say, "We know you're undocumented." Their eyes said enough. Their tone said more. Victorina said, "They knew we didn't have papers. That's why they thought we would never speak." It wasn't just fear. It was control. A quiet kind of control that held people in place. And for a long time, Victorina accepted it. Because fear had kept her alive. It had kept her safe. Speaking out felt like stepping off a cliff. But fear doesn't last forever. Something inside her began to change. Slowly, over time, the fear turned into something new: frustration, sadness, and then a quiet kind of anger. Not the kind that makes you yell, the kind that makes you think, "This isn't right. This can't go on forever." She began to question the silence. Why should she stay quiet when she had done nothing wrong? Why should she hide while others acted like they had all the power? She wasn't stealing. She wasn't hurting anyone. She was cleaning rooms, washing towels, folding sheets, and doing her best to survive. If anyone should feel shame, it wasn't her. One day, something just clicked. It wasn't a big moment with flashing lights. It was quiet. It happened in her heart. She looked in the mirror and saw not just a maid, but a woman with a voice. And she realized something important. They could only keep her silent as long as she let them, and she was done letting them. Why she spoke out. The moment that changed everything. For years, Victorina Morales lived in silence. She worked long hours in a place full of gold walls and powerful people. She followed every rule, stayed quiet, and never spoke out of turn. She believed that staying silent was the safest way to survive. But silence comes with a cost. Deep inside, her heart grew heavy. Each day, she carried the weight of fear, of being invisible, of being treated like a machine instead of a human. But she told herself this was the price of a better life for herself and for the family she left behind in Guatemala. Then one day, something shifted. Victorina was at home, sitting in front of the television, when she saw something that made her freeze. Donald Trump, the very man whose clothes she had folded, whose bedroom she had cleaned, was speaking at a rally. His words were loud, harsh, and full of anger. He was talking about immigrants. He called people like her illegals. He said they were criminals. He promised to remove them all. Victorina's hands trembled. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was the same man whose towels she had folded every day, whose suits she had laid out with care, whose shoes she had polished until they shone. She had worked so hard to do her job right. She had served him with respect, even when no one respected her. And now, he was on national television calling her a threat. That moment broke something inside her. She thought, how can he say this? I've given years of my life to his home. I've helped keep his world clean and perfect. I've never hurt anyone. I'm not a criminal. I'm a mother. I'm a worker. I'm a human being. That's when something snapped. Victorina realized her silence was not protecting her. It was protecting the people who had treated her like she didn't matter. The people who gave her fake papers, who made empty promises, and who now stood on big stages pretending to be heroes while blaming the very people who helped build their world. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just trying to live. She had followed every order. She had worked through sickness, through sadness, through fear. And yet, her truth was being erased by powerful voices calling her names on TV. That was the final push. In 2018, Victorina made a brave choice. She decided to speak up. She contacted a journalist. She told them everything about how she got hired, how she was given false documents, how she worked for years in silence, and how she lived every day with the fear of being found and sent away. When the interview was published, her story spread like wildfire. People across the country read about her. Some were shocked. They had never thought about the workers behind the scenes. Others were angry at the system, at the lies, at the way people like Victorina were being treated. And then, some were proud of her courage, proud that she found her voice, proud that she chose to speak for the many others who still couldn't. Victorina said, "I know I could be deported, but I need to tell the truth." Those words carried power. She was no longer just a maid working behind gold walls. She became a symbol of truth in a world full of silence. She stood for every worker who was told to stay quiet, for every woman who was treated like she didn't belong, for every person who was used and then forgotten. Her story wasn't just about Trump. It was about what happens when the people at the bottom finally rise and speak. Victorina didn't have fancy clothes. She didn't have a stage. But she had her story, and that was enough to shake the world. She didn't just speak for herself. She spoke for all the invisible workers, the ones who clean, cook, carry, and care behind closed doors, while the world looks the other way. And finally, people listened. Victorina Morales was never meant to be famous. She was just a maid, cleaning rooms, folding towels, and trying to survive. But sometimes, the quietest people carry the loudest truth. Her story is not just about Donald Trump. It's about a system where rich and powerful people can use silent workers and never be held responsible. It's about broken promises, fake smiles, and hidden secrets behind gold curtains. Victorina could have stayed quiet. She could have kept her job, stayed out of the news, and disappeared like many others. But she chose something else. She chose courage. She knew the risk. She knew people would judge her. But she spoke anyway because her truth mattered. Now her voice is part of a bigger conversation, one that asks, who is building the rich man's world, and who's paying the price? Victorina's story reminds us that even one voice can start a wave. Her words have made people think, talk, and question what's going on behind closed doors. And as more people like her speak up, maybe the silence will finally break for good. So next time you see a clean hotel room or a perfect golf club, remember, behind every shine, someone is working hard, someone with a story, someone like Victorina. And now, thanks to her, the world is listening.